Couple of things that we're going to address today, talking about Jay Slaters' disappearance. One will be about some of the things that were said in the social media conspiracy theory post that was posted on a discussion page regarding Jay Slater. Some of the inconsistencies in that, some things that people in my comments have brought my attention to. Secondly, what makes a case like this spark such big media attention? Why are the public so invested in the conspiracy theories regarding this case? Thirdly, what my actual thoughts are on the disappearance of Jay Slater as we enter the 8th day with no answers into the missing teen's whereabouts. One of the things that I picked up on in that theory that was posted on social media was the spelling of the word mum. Over in the UK, we normally spell it M-U-M, and it's more commonly spelled M-O-M over in the United States. But actually, recent linguistic surveys do show a 75 to 25% split in the UK, with the spelling of M-O-M being more particularly common in the West Midlands / the Birmingham area. So mum can be spelt as M-U-M / M-O-M over in the UK, but it's more predominantly spelt like that in the West Midlands. Now, Jay Slater is from an area in the UK that would be considered the northwest of the UK, and this too could still be spelt like that up there. So we can kind of somewhat take that out of the context of the theory that's been put online. But you could also tie down to the fact, was anyone with Jay Slater that was from the West Midlands / Birmingham area before his disappearance, as this could give indication as to the individual that actually wrote this theory, as if they believe that's what happened from the version of their events, they should definitely come forward as opposed to posting it on a Facebook page. Also in the comments they did mention the policing standards. One of the things I was trying to say is that I'm not taking away from the Spanish police here, but I was trying to make the case and point that in the UK and America, a lot of individuals don't feel like their policing standards are up to scratch and think that there are multiple issues wrong with their policing standards. And what I was trying to explain a little bit here is that in Spain, without getting into too much depth, they just don't have enough resources. They don't have as many resources as, say, the US with its divisions, its FBI, its police, its state troopers, it's so on and forth. Similarly to the UK and its investigation teams over here, it's just that with limited resources, it definitely adds to the impact in searching for the missing teen. Now, there was something mentioned in this theory about the bags, and that in these bags contained £17,000 worth of substances that they were meant to dish out at the festival that they were attending. Problematically, in this theory, they say that Jay has taken half of the bag. Now, unless the individual was Pablo Escobar, I can't see this young teen taking 8.5 K's worth of substances at a festival alone. The individual would have probably left that festival in an ambulance and not been able to have gone back to the apartment of two individuals before trying to take an 11-hour trek home. Now, there's been a bit of confusion in the case. There is an individual whose name has been mentioned throughout, and her name is Lucy Law. Some people refer to her as Lucy May, as I believe that May is just her middle name. So some people refer to her as Lucy May, some people refer to her as Lucy Law, but her name is Lucy May Law. Now, this theory somewhat mentions that Lucy is some part of this elaborate cover-up, and that Lucy never received a phone call from Jay, and that Lucy had taken Jay's phone from his apartment while it was on charge and ordered a taxi in the early hours of the morning, driven off to an unknown location in the mountains somewhere in Tenerife before she threw Jay's phone, left it, got back into the taxi and went back to her hotel before roughly 7:30 a.m. Now, that's just what the theory states, contradictory in itself because Lucy May will have the call log from Jay at 8:30 a.m. in the morning. That would obviously be something that investigators have looked into, whether that's in Spain or the UK. Not only that, but the police would have also looked into and been able to have seen CCTV confirming Lucy's whereabouts when that phone call was placed, i.e. it could be CCTV from around the area, could be CCTV from the apartment hotel area, but they'd also be able to confirm call logs between taxi ranks, who took that taxi, where they were going to, where they went, which would then narrow down if that phone was taken and stashed in the mountains. Police would be able to confirm and find it just through that simply alone. Within that theory in itself, there were multiple inconsistencies throughout. Now, I can understand why some people have paid that theory attention. When a case like this doesn't have a lot of answers, some people, unfortunately, to give themselves a kind of self-comfort, answer that question themselves. This could be through personal experience, or this could be something that's sort of known as like movie syndrome, where they almost turn it into a documentary style film process in their head, which gives them the answers as to what they think happened. And sometimes what people don't understand is that fact is stranger than fiction, and in the fact that it can be quite self-explanatory and straightforward, as opposed to these huge mass-style conspiracy theories. There are a few things that make a case, like Jay Slaters for example, go a lot bigger than others. Some of this can be down to personal interpretation, and that could be through a personal experience depending on the individual that's invested in the case. Individuals might have had a really hard time with law enforcement, and in a subject case like Karen Reed's, might believe that all the law enforcement inside of Karen Reed's case are all corrupt, have something to hide, and it's them that are behind the mass conspiracy, as opposed to it being Karen Reed that backed up and hit her husband with her car. There are multiple examples that we could go through here, but without that, it comes down to the personal understanding and experience of the individual that's invested in the case. Another thing that adds to a case like this, which makes the case a lot bigger, is mystery surrounding the case. When a case like this is a mystery, every day the news drip feeds smaller bits of information into the case, and this for the public creates a murder mystery style investigation, in which to the public the case becomes like a Rubik's Cube and every day a new side gets solved. Problematically though, this can also cause a lot of chaos like we're seeing here with the media frenzy, conspiracy theories, and YouTube channels trying to gain monetization from it. If anyone's unaware, my channel is not monetized. I just try and negate through some of the conspiracy theories. As you'll notice, a lot of YouTube channels don't even show their own faces, and this would be to primarily hide away from things like defamation of character, slander, and the potential of being sued about individuals that they're speaking about, as they're giving context with lack of evidence. For example, Lucy Law has been spoken about multiple times in the case. She is actually an individual that's been trying to help multiple times. She is herself the individual that found the last two people that were known to be with Jay Slater. It is her that questioned them, her that found them, and her that gave them over to Spanish authorities. It's also her that was unhappy with how Spanish authorities handled this and has been very public in speaking about wanting more help from local efforts around the area to investigate the disappearance of her friend Jay Slater. Now, there was a theory online about Jay going back to a place and being set up by Lucy for a Rolex. If this held any sort of truth whatsoever, the last thing that Lucy would do if she was trying to get away from the case would be implicate herself even more by going to the people that she was meant to have been setting up her friend with. Some people could say that she was going there to speak to them to cover it up some more, but her doing so and giving the individuals over to Spanish authorities would only further implicate herself more into the case, giving more reason into the authorities actually investigating these types of rumors. Another thing that some people have mentioned in my comments, if Jay was dehydrated, why didn't he drink water at the house that he was at before he left to go and get the bus? Now, you have to remember something very simple here. Jay missed the bus at 10 p.m. at night. Now, the last time that Jay spoke to someone on the phone was when he had 1% battery at 8:30 a.m. the next morning. So Jay could have drank and actually somewhat been hydrated when he left the apartment of the two unknown individuals, but it wasn't until 10, almost 11 hours later that Jay is saying on the phone that he has 1% battery and that he's dehydrated. And this is after he's been walking roughly 10 to 11 hours, toppled on top of the fact that he's in the mountains in an area that he doesn't know, and the fact he's been at the NRG festival all day in itself, with the blistering heat and terrain of the mountains. All of these things alone are enough to be the reason that the individual is in the situation that he's currently in. So what do I believe happened in Jay Slater's disappearance with the information that we have so far? I believe that Jay Slater attended and was at the NRG Music Festival. I believe that while Jay Slater was there, he was more than likely intoxicated, and through videos that have been shared online, I believe he's intoxicated because Jay can be seen staggering around in these videos. Not only that, it's just from my personal interpretation, and it's a very common thing for young individuals to do out there, and I'm not saying that it's a good thing to do, neither am I condoning it. Now, I do believe while the individual was at the music festival, I can't speak for the rest of his holiday, that he was on some type of substance. Now, what that might be, I don't know, but through videos that I've seen, that's what I personally believe. I believe that Jay was separated from his friends, and while at the festival just simply met other individuals like himself, continued partying on through the day, and in the later hours of the day, went back to two individuals' accommodation. Now, for what reasons, I don't know. It could have been to continue drinking, it could have been to continue taking substances, it could have been for both, but for whatever reason, Jay knew that he had a bus that he had to catch, and he tried to make his way to catch this bus to get back to his accommodation. Now, the travel from where he was at to his accommodation would have roughly have been around an 11-hour walk. Jay, not knowing the area, being intoxicated and potentially on substances, not thinking with complete clarity because of that, may have thought that it was just a better idea to walk 11 hours back to his accommodation, or that for him this was somewhat doable. But as I'm sure that we're all aware through intoxication, we don't seem to make the best decisions while we're intoxicated, and the individual could have thought that this was just somewhat of a good idea, or somewhat just doable in the sense that he could have done this. Now we know that Jay didn't directly walk alongside the road, and with the terrain in Tenerife, he somewhat tried to take a diversion or a different route. And if Jay was using maps on his phone, if he's in the rough terrain of Spain, his maps are only going to show him a rough route of the closest road and not exactly navigate him through the mountains. The reason why they're having a tough time in finding Jay's last known location is because of if he veers off just a few inches from the start of his journey, by the time he's walked almost 10 hours, Jay could be in such a big area, could lead Jay to be in a completely different area to where they're actually searching for him now. They're searching for him in an area near to where his accommodation is. We don't know how far he's veered off from the path, and this could literally put him in so many different areas that this in itself is giving investigators a really tough time in just searching and finding any disappearance or traces of where Jay could potentially be. So I believe that after trying to tackle the rough terrain, after a long day at a festival, no idea as to where he's going, no clarity in his mindset through intoxication, dehydration has set in. The dehydration would have been doubled / tripled, quadrupled from the substances taken as well, and a contributing factor to this teen's disappearance could have been that he has succumbed to dehydration in trying to attempt an 11-hour walk back to his accommodation. With all the conspiracies and rumours floating about on the social media platforms, I genuinely somewhat believe it can be as simple as that. Got drunk and intoxicated, went back to an accommodation of two individuals he just met, might have felt like he was somewhat uncomfortable with them, didn't want to stay there, decided to go back to the accommodation in which he was staying, missed his bus. At the time had enough battery on his phone and was somewhat hydrated enough to think that he could take an 11-hour walk back to his accommodation, got lost en route back to his accommodation, and has unfortunately somewhere in the mountains succumbed to dehydration, with it being a matter of time before Jay's body is somewhat found. Now, as horrific and horrible as that might sound, I do hope and pray that Jay is found safely. My thoughts with the family and friends of Jay, and I do hope for a safe return for Jay Slater. With the information and evidence given, kind of feel like that's just my personal interpretation of where we're at this stage of the investigation. But that's it from me. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section down below. Feel free to like and subscribe as it really helps out the channel. If on YouTube, hit that bell for post notifications just so that you can keep up to date with anything regarding the case moving forward. Otherwise, thanks for watching.